We are live now, okay? Let's share our live video. But 3 people are still on the screen. Bear with us, secretary will be here shortly, okay? So just, we are not going to play any songs. I will start with the introductions, and then from there, I'll bring the secretary. For those who are actually watching today, my name is Dengwar Judge, and I would like to introduce you with one of our former Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan. The question is like, how do we ended up Duncan in on our live TV today? That because I got to know Duncan in a small town called Arlington, Virginia, whereby we used to play basketball. So this is where I get to know him. Before that, we didn't even know each other's. And then there was a small called Will to Africa, whereby I got to know Duncan, and Dr. Akenyemaro was invited, as well as Duncan were there. So we were both a speaker at the event. So at that time, we were connected. From that day until today, we become someone that inspired me and so many other young children in America. So today we want to bring him on our live TV to inspire our young children that are living in America, as well as people around the world. So it's happy to hear from you guys on the comment sections. So I'm not going to speak that much. I will bring the secretary for those who are actually watching, and then from there we start. Hi, Secretary.
Good afternoon, good evening. Thanks so much for having me. I'm truly honored.
Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. Welcome to the Twic East Community TV. I am Aja Majuratim, and today we have the great honor of speaking with the former U.S. Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan. Secretary Duncan, we are so thrilled to have you, and we want you to feel right at home during our conversation. For those tuning in right now, if you have any questions for Secretary Duncan, we will take them towards the end of the live show. So before we dive into questions, Arne, let me just introduce what the community is and what the Twic East community is. It is a nonprofit organization, and we are playing a crucial role in both the South Sudanese diaspora and the communities back home in South Sudan. So we serve as a bridge, and we're connecting individuals to their roots while also providing critical support to those still in the country. Our mission focuses on preserving cultural identity, providing educational opportunities, and supporting health and developments. But we're also an ethnicity. We belong in the Twic East County. We are 5 Payams, and that's an administrative level, and we are 17 clans. So feel free at home. This is what we call home, really, for us, and it's your home as well. Thank you so much.
So yeah, great introduction, Secretary Duncan. We are honored to join us today. Obviously, we are running a little bit late on time, guys. So we apologize for that, but we wanted to go ahead and get started. Now, our discussion. This is a discussion to have Secretary Duncan expertise and wisdom about everything that he has learned in life and all the activities that he has involved during his time with the Obama administrations and all the things that he's doing in the community now. So it's a great honor for us to have him on. If you have any questions for our community members that are watching around the world and in the USA, please type them on the comment section. Toward the end of our discussion with Secretary Duncan, we will take, with our team, we'll take the Q&A, and she's going to take note too. So if anything come on and that we'd like to share with the Secretary, we will bring it on. So you guys have a great conversation and share the link with your friends. We want everybody to learn something and get something out of this discussion. It's a community engagement. So Secretary Duncan, a great honor. Welcome to our community. We so honored to have you on today.
Thanks so much. Look forward to a great conversation.
So yeah, you may start now.
Before I start, I wanted Aguirre to say her name to the viewers, and that's so. Aguirre, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Good evening, everybody. You guys know my name and face, but I'll introduce myself a little bit more. Hi, everybody. I'm Chala Tim, or Aguirre Tim, and today I'll be facilitating the questions in the Q&A with Secretary Duncan at the end. So as Ajah said, please feel free to write your questions that you may have for the Secretary in the comment section, and I will be monitoring those. But it's such an honor to have you again, Secretary Duncan, and I will give it back to Ajah to be able to facilitate the discussion.
Thank you so much for that, Aguirre. Secretary Duncan, I am so excited to delve into your personal journey and your work in education reform. I know we share a connection to Harvard, and I would love to start by asking about your time there, especially your involvement with the Phillips Brooks House Association. For those unfamiliar with the PBHA, it's a student-led organization focused on social service and advocacy work, primarily in Boston and Cambridge, and we have ties to neighborhoods like Dorchester and all over South Boston. It provides valuable opportunities for students to engage with underserved communities. I'd love for you to share how your involvement with PBHA may have influenced your approach to educational reform, as well as what organizations like PBHA can do to advance equity in education.
Great. And I said to you guys before we went live, for folks watching, please feel free to ask anything. I'm an open book. There's nothing off limits, personal, professional. So please ask whatever questions you might be thinking about. I'll even back up a little bit before that. I grew up 2 blocks from where I live now on the south side of Chicago in Hyde Park. My father was a professor at the University of Chicago, so he would bike to work every day. And my mother ran an after-school tutoring program that was only about 1.5 miles from our house. We used to walk there some days, but it was across an invisible barrier between middle-class integrated Hyde Park, where I lived, and all black, all poor North Kenwood, Oakland on the other side, the north side of 47th. And so I grew up in this pretty, you don't know as a kid, it's all you know, it's just your life, but a pretty unique situation of having my friends during the school day and having my friends, my mother's after school program. And what I saw my entire life is that my friends, my mother's after school program were as smart, as talented, as hardworking, as resilient, as entrepreneurial as my friends during the school day, but just didn't have the kinds of educational opportunities my sister and brother and I and others were fortunate to have. And she devoted her life to that community. She worked there for 50 years until her health gave out. Unfortunately, she passed fairly recently. But sort of the fight for equity, I always say that talent is everywhere, opportunity is not. And she tried to bring opportunity where there was tremendous talent, but just not a lot of chances. And just so many of my friends grew up to do extraordinary things because my mother and others were in their life. That was formative to me. So going to Harvard was obviously an incredible, privilege and blessing. And I just, so admire your journey and what you're continuing to do and your commitment to giving back. But for those of us lucky enough to have those opportunities, I think we have a real obligation to reach back and help out. And so my work with the Phillips Brooks House Association, honestly, that was just sort of continuity from what I did in my mother's program. And we grew up, being mentored and, mentoring younger than us. And she thought, 10-year-olds taught 5-year-olds and 15-year-olds taught 10-year-olds. So we all grew up teaching and being taught. But what I did specifically with Phyllis Brooks House was mentor a young man. I won't use his last name. His first name was Corey, who grew up in the Roxbury housing projects, and going there every week. And what it really did for me, I hope I helped him over the couple of years we were together, but it just really kept me grounded in community. And as you know, at a place like Harvard, you can get a little bit insular, you can get a little bit isolated from the real world. But going to Roxbury every week, spending time with him, spending time with his family, with his mother. I played basketball in the community as well. That was sort of where I came from. That felt like home to me. And so I was very, very fortunate to have that kind of opportunity and have so much respect for what, so many hundreds and hundreds of volunteers have done through Phyllis Brooks House. As I mentioned, my daughter just graduated from there, and she volunteered for, I think, all 4 years, at least 3 of the 4, through Phyllis Brooks House, at a tutoring program. And so just to see that continuity meant a lot to me.
Thank you so much for your answer. I think that whenever we're doing work at the moment, we don't realize how much of an impact that we're doing until later on. And that's one of my biggest motivations, is that one day you can meet someone and you will not know how much you impacted that person until later on. You're like, oh, wow, I didn't know I did that in your life, And so, so thank you so much. I'm going to follow in with the Harvard housing system, because I just have to ask you this. So it's a unique aspect of student life. And I'm going to give a shout out to the Quad, because they're the best houses of Harvard. But which house did you live at, out of curiosity? You never really shared that.
Yeah. I lived at Leverett House. So sort of a random, you apply, or sort of a lottery, and you just go where they send you. So I was quite happy to do that. And it was along the river there, and used to walk to class and walk across the river to go to basketball practice every day. So it felt pretty lucky there.
Oh, I don't know why I thought you were at Adams, but thank you so much for sharing. So for my next question, I want to shift to your time as the Secretary of Education. So during your time, you oversaw a transformative period in U.S. education. Race to the Top and the overhaul of the No Child Left Behind Act were major undertakings. In your view, what have been the most lasting impacts of these policies on the U.S. education system? And how do you think they continue to shape the way schools operate today?
I'll answer that, but I'll try and give a little background for folks watching, just to try and sort of understand what I was thinking about. And honestly, communities like yours that have been through so much, and many new immigrants to the country, and many families that are fractured and trying to adjust to a new culture and a new language and go to school, and sometimes people are moving place to place and state to state. For me, the American dream is that education can be the pathway out of poverty and the pathway to opportunity. And I assume, I don't know this, but I assume so many of people on the call are probably first generation college goers. And you only get that kind of opportunity due to your incredible hard work and perseverance. But I really wanted students across the country, challenged academically. So we tried to do a couple things. We tried to make sure that states had high standards. And what that meant for me is that college, we know, is too expensive, and many of you are probably still paying off grants and loans, and paying off loans, and I'm sorry about that. But what we don't talk about is we spend, as a country, somewhere between 10, 11, 12 billion dollars a year on high school graduates who go to college and have to take remedial classes. They're not taking classes for college credit. So they're burning through Pell Grants, they're burning through loans, parents are helping them, and they're not yet taking college classes. So nobody wins there. So part of what we said with No Child Left, with Race to the Top, is that we want states to have standards that if high school graduates are making them, they're guaranteed to take college classes for college credit. And we did that a little bit state by state. So if you lived in Texas, the University of Texas to certify that those standards were high enough. And so that was very important to us. Everything we did was a little controversial and hard, and happy to talk about the challenges as well. But sort of setting high standards across the country so that hardworking students would not have to go to college, think they're ready, and not be ready. And I remember visiting some communities where about 75%, these are the high school graduates, not the high school dropouts, obviously. The high school graduates, 75% were taking remedial classes. And so they just weren't ready to take that next step in their educational journey that they desperately wanted to have. So that was a piece of what we did. We wanted to make sure that we had high quality teachers. And I always say that the best thing we can give to any student is a fantastic teacher and a great principal. And if you have 3 great teachers in a row, that can literally change your life. If you have 3 bad teachers in a row, that can really stifle your hopes and dreams. And so trying to think about how we attract and retain great talent into every community, but particularly underserved communities, be that inner city communities, be that rural communities, remote Native American reservations, whatever it might be. We really tried to focus on high school graduation rates, and was proud to get high school graduation rates to all-time highs for every group of children: white, Black, Latino, Native, first-generation college goers, English language learners, students living below the poverty line. And for me, that's a constant journey. So I was proud we got it to all-time highs, but it's still not high enough. And those of you on this call know that if you drop out of high school today, it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to get a good paying job. That just sort of doesn't exist. And for me, the goal has to be for every young person to, one, graduate from high school, but then have some kind of aspiration for learning after that. So it might be a 4-year university, it might be community college, it might be trade, technical, vocational training, whatever it might be. But for me, the graduation from high school is like it's an important, very important milestone. But you have to be ready to take the next step in that journey. And so trying to work on all of those things through Race to the Top and other levers we had, we spent a lot of time. Much of that has stuck, has lasted, which is really encouraging. And again, lots of mistakes I made, and happy to talk about those as well. But just trying to make sure, and again, I sort of tried to always think about my mother's program where dumbing down standards or not challenging young people to be successful. You want to challenge and you want to provide the support. And those two things go hand in hand, and trying to sort of instill that culture across the country was really important to me.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you that not every state participated in the Race to the Top, and those that did had varying levels of success. So what strategies were most effective in encouraging states to take bold steps in their applications? And how did you navigate the different political landscapes to get widespread participation? I could assume someone in Massachusetts is more liberal than someone in Alabama, So how did you navigate through that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I always say, I happen to be a Democrat and happen to work with President Obama, which was the honor of my lifetime. But I always say education should be the ultimate bipartisan or nonpartisan issue. For me, there's nothing, left or right or Republican, Democrat about more kids having access to high quality pre-K and higher graduation rates, and more kids reading at grade level in 3rd grade, and more young people having a chance to go to college and be able to afford that. For me, those are like nation building goals. Those aren't political goals. And I'm a policy guy. I'm not really a political person. So what I believed, and this is sort of part of my management theory, I was a big believer in carrots and rewards and not in sticks and consequences. So with Race to the Top, that was something that was completely optional. States did not have to apply for that money. We had about $4 billion, which was real money. And it was very interesting. Many Republican governors were initially very skeptical of me and us, and like, you're just going to give it to your friends, or you're going to do whatever. I'll never forget. It just happened. We did everything in a blind way. So we didn't know which state. They just gave me a number for the state, not the name. And when we did the first round of Race to the Top, there are 2 states that were far above everybody else in terms of their scoring. And one was Delaware, which happened to be a Democratic-led state. And the other was Tennessee, which was a Republican-led state. And I was so thankful. I can't tell you, because had it been 2 Democratic states, everybody would have thought the fix was in. We weren't going to play stuff straight. And when they saw that we just played it very, very straight and were transparent around everything, that was like the light bulb went on to so many other states. So after that, so many folks came in and participated going forward. Again, nobody had to. And some of my closest friends, and working with governors, Governor Haslam in Tennessee, a Republican governor, was, I thought, one of the best education governors in the country. Governor Kasich in Ohio was one of the best, did a fantastic job, Republican governor. I remember him being very, very skeptical of me, but we had some very honest conversations and we got there. So for me, it is never, ever about politics. And I hate when politics taint education. It's too important. It's too sacred. And it takes a little bit of time to build trust. But I think that's one of the things, honestly, I'm most proud of, that at the end of the day, we had, friends, colleagues across the political spectrum working together on behalf of kids. And you may not agree on every issue, and that's fine. But we can agree that where kids are dropping out of high school, we're really, hurting their life in a very profound and long-lasting way. And we all have, again, I think, not just an educational, but like a moral obligation to create opportunity and try and get better together. So I try to take the politics out of it in every way I can.
That is a very great answer to that. And, we saw like the aftermath of it, and there were so many high school graduation rates were so high during your time period as the U.S. Secretary. And so during that time, I feel like people should have known. And I think right now people are looking back and they're like, wow, Arne did a lot for the country in that aspect.
I'll give you one more, real quick. Just one concrete example where the bipartisan work is important. So we talked a lot. President Obama and I talked a lot about making community colleges free. We put a lot of money behind community colleges, and I visited dozens of them, but we were not successful in getting the Congress to approve the funds to make community college free for everyone. But who actually did it was actually Governor Haslam from Tennessee, a Republican governor. So took what was quote unquote a Democratic idea, but I don't think of that. And he actually made community college free for everyone in the state because he thought that was the best investment he could make in his most precious resource, his human capital, his people. And so for me, that's a great example where something that supposedly is a Democratic idea, we actually didn't get done. We were unsuccessful at the kind of scale we wanted. He made it happen in his state for his people. And I was so thankful that he did that. Politics had nothing to do with it. It's the right thing for his state. And I thought it was the right thing for the country.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah. Our country right now, it seems like we're divided, but we're actually not. Everything that we're fighting for is for the Common Core. And it's one of the best things that, as a proud American, you're very like excited to see what's next, especially with the elections coming up. So thank you so much, Arne. Before I just want to dive in a little bit to CRED, because this question has been on my mind all week, and it's something that I wanted to ask you. So the Chicago CRED, for anyone who doesn't know, it's creating real economic destiny. It's to focus on job training and support for at-risk youth. So this initiative emphasizes the importance of community-level engagement to address gun violence and juvenile rehabilitation. So Secretary Arne, what lessons from your work at CRED can be applied nationwide to improve juvenile justice outcomes, and how can schools better support at-risk youth to prevent them from entering the criminal justice system? And sorry, by the way, if I'm going too fast with the questions. We're trying to have some space for Q&A because I can see there's a lot of people in the comments that are asking questions.
Yeah, and I'll give a little, again, background on why I do what I do now. And this is honestly a tougher, more painful story. So I grew up playing basketball on the south and west sides here in Chicago. And I had a series of older guys who sort of protected me and gave me safe passage in and out of neighborhoods. And when I was 14, 15, 16, I started to lose some of them to gun violence. And that was incredibly painful. And at that point, I didn't really have a social worker or a counselor to talk to. And you just sort of internalize that. And I think, honestly, it shaped me and probably scarred me in some ways a little bit difficult to talk about. That's my teenage years, 14, 15, 16. Fast forward 20 years to when I took over the Chicago Public Schools and I became CEO of the Chicago Public Schools. And when I was 36 and did that work for 7.5 years before going to DC with President Obama, Lots I'm proud of during my time leading CPS, and happy to come back another time and tell you about all my successes. But on my watch, during my 7.5 years, on average, we had a child, a Chicago public school student, killed every 2 weeks due to gun violence. It was a devastating rate of loss. And that was by far the hardest part of my job, and everything else, academic achievement and budgets and labor management and operations, transportation. I don't say any of that was easy, but it was wildly easier than dealing with that loss. And my wife and I had 2 young kids at that point, and 99% of the times I was meeting families after they had just lost their son or daughter, and going to their homes and going to those funerals and going to those classrooms. There was an empty desk and a class of traumatized kids. That was by far the hardest thing I dealt with. And it got harder over time. It did not get easier. Very naively, when our family moved to DC in 2008, early 2009, I thought gun violence in Chicago couldn't get worse. I thought it was at rock bottom. And unfortunately, 7 years we were in DC, it got a lot worse. And so for me coming home, this felt like the crisis facing the city. I really felt that whoever we consider ourselves to be, parents, educators, community leaders, whatever, we failed to keep our kids safe on the south and west sides of my hometown of Chicago. And obviously, the city has given me every opportunity, educationally, culturally, athletically, socially. And I just really felt that I owed it to the city to come back. And so when I left the administration, I started Chicago Cred, and we started as a very small nonprofit working with 25 young men who were at extreme risk of shooting or being shot. We had one room. We've grown over the past 8 years. We now have 9 sites across the south and west sides. We work with men. We work with women. With teenagers, we're down to 12-year-olds, which sort of breaks my heart, but that's who's shooting and being shot, unfortunately, in our city. And so what we're trying to do is give all these young people a pathway out of the cycles of violence that are far too prevalent here in Chicago, and give them a way out. So it's the hardest work I've ever done. It's honestly the most heartbreaking when we have a fantastic team. We pour our heart and soul into some of our participants, and when they get killed, which has happened more than I like to talk about, it's beyond devastating. But it's also the most miraculous and inspiring work I've ever done, to see the transformation over time. The men and women team spend about a year and a half with us, and then we spin them off into the legal economy, help them get jobs. To see that transformation over time is the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. And many of our staff now are our life coaches, our outreach workers, our job coaches, our case managers. Many are our alumni, and I know where they came from. I know what they used to do. I know what they're doing now. And just to know that, redemption is possible, and to see that the hard work, and so that the hard work and perseverance so many in your community demonstrate. I see that same spirit working with our guys. So they have been through hell. They've been raised in extraordinarily difficult situations. And people talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. This is not post anything. It's present, it's perpetual, it's constant, it's current. Helping people heal. We say all the time that hurt people, but people who are healing can heal not just themselves, but their families and their community. So being part of this journey with our teammates, our staff, and our participants, it's the most remarkable work, hopefully the most important work I've ever done in my life.
I want to connect the point that you have made to the Lost Boys of Sudan. They endured a harrowing journey, fleeing the civil war, surviving unimaginable conditions. And, eventually they resettled in places like here in the United States. And many of our members of the Twic East community here arrived as part of this group. They embody resilience in the face of extreme adversity. I know sometimes when I speak to my father about the stuff that he has gone through, it's like, wow, you're taken back. So I want to connect this to a book that you wrote, How Schools Work. The central theme of this was overcoming challenges through education. So you highlighted students who face significant barriers, such as poverty, violence, trauma, yet still strive for a better future. So how do you see the role of education in helping individuals overcome such extreme challenges? And what lessons from the Lost Boys journey can be applied to, the U.S. education system to better support students in similar circumstances. The Lost Boys, they had a very successful migration. Even to quote Bob Simon, or Bob, of CBS News, he called it one time one of the most successful resettlement programs in United States history. So I don't know, I feel like there was a deep connection there. So I wanted you to get into more detail about it, and specifically in your book that you wrote.
Yeah, I'll answer that, and I'll give you a little personal history too, because you guys are really making me think and feel some things here. But it was interesting. I was, I'm still far from an expert on what your community has been through. I know it's been horrific at times, but I first became aware when Manute Bol came to the United States to play basketball at the University of Bridgeport. And that must have been, I'm trying to think back, like 1983, 84. But the coach at the University of Bridgeport was a man named Bruce Webster. And his son was Keith Webster. And Keith Webster was the co-captain of the Harvard basketball team with me. So it was a very, very small basketball world. And, hearing some of his story and getting to know what he was about really sort of started to open my mind, open my consciousness. Luol Deng, who I know many of you know, is played for the Chicago Bulls. He and I have done some work together. He's just a remarkable human being, leader. A lot of basketball connections here, but my assistant coach in college was his coach with the Chicago Bulls, Tom Thibodeau, who's now the coach of the Knicks. And he always said his favorite player, the guy he respected the most, was Luol Deng. And what he did with the South Sudanese Olympic team was remarkable. That they came very, very, very close to beating the United States. I have to admit, I was probably more rooting for them than the United States, but it was just a remarkable piece. And then getting to know Deng, as he talked about in Arlington, Virginia, I got to know him. It's a lot of on the basketball court, and just sort of hearing his story. And he was one of those lost boys, and hearing a little bit of what he had been through was just profoundly moving to me, honestly. And it's just, unimaginable challenges that, are you going to survive? Are you going to survive the journey? Are you going to survive attacks from lions? I mean, it's just stuff that I can't even, conceptualize. And so, I don't know if there's an equivalent to that degree of challenge and difficulty here in the United States, but just the challenges of folks that I grew up with. I'll just give you, one example, which this is nothing I haven't talked about. I talked about this in the book, but like I said, my mother's philosophy was that 15-year-olds taught 10-year-olds and 10-year-olds taught 5-year-olds. So my group of guys growing up, did it by age group, we were taught by a guy named Kerry Holly, who he was in high school when we were young, and then he went to college at DePaul and taught us all the way through law school. He stayed local. But I'll never forget when Kerry Holly was born, his mother didn't know his father. His mother was on the streets. She wrapped him in newspaper and threw him in the garbage. So he literally started life in a garbage can. And his grandmother fished him out and raised him. And he found my mother's program when he was like 8 or 9 years old. And she took him under her wing, and he was gifted. I remember she had him. She was sort of spotted talent. He was managing the checkbook for her program by the time he was like 13 or 14, huge responsibility. And Kerry went on to be a leader in Silicon Valley. He was an inventor. He had patents. He's traveled the world. We're all a little older now. He literally just retired at 70, an extraordinarily successful career. But that for me sort of epitomized the potential that everybody has. And so whether you're a lost boy, whether you're coming here without any family, whether you start life in a garbage can, you have this extraordinary potential, and you need people around you to see that potential blossom and to bring it to fruition. And so that for me has really been the guide. And I could give you countless other stories of guys I grew up with. But that was my, I would say I went to, great universities, including Harvard, great education. But the best teacher of my life was Kerry Holly. And he taught me probably for 12, 14 years. And just that consistency was remarkable. And so that's the driving, again, passion for me, is just knowing the potential of everyone. Where you come from matters. How you help people heal matters. But I will never, ever concede that, if you happen to be poor, you can't be successful, or if you happen to be an immigrant, you can't be successful if you don't speak the language, or if your family's not here. My mother would always say, if your stomach's growling, it's hard to concentrate. So she fed kids every day. First thing, they came in, she'd feed everybody. Kids that weren't going to eat at home that night, she'd send them home with food. And so you deal with the very real challenges, but you don't ever use as excuses to not expect the most and challenge the most and support folks to achieve their dreams. So that's a long answer to your question, but that's sort of been my guiding philosophy all my life, because that's literally how I grew up. That's in my DNA. That's in my bones, because I didn't read about it. I lived that.
Thank you. It reminds me of this quote that it's not where you come from that matters, it's where you're going. And so I'm really delighted to have this conversation with you. It's giving a lot of reflection, and I know our audience also are feeling the same way. I think right now is the perfect time to move into the Q&A portion of our conversation. So we're going to invite all of our audience to just comment if you have any questions. We're going to go through, and I think Aguirre is going to pick up on that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Secretary Duncan and Ajah, for the great discussion that you guys had. I was sitting here reflecting on my journey and also the journey of our community, and I just learned so much. And so we're just going to do a Q&A and kind of just go in and dive a little bit more deeper into it. I saw a couple questions that came up beforehand, so I'll address those. And then I have some things that were some questions that came up to me during y'all's discussion that I would also love to ask. So the first question someone asked was when you were talking about student loans. We know student loans is one of the most triggered spot for all students, especially for students that come from low income. It's kind of hard for us sometimes to want to seek these different educational opportunities and wondering how we'll be able to pay them back and be able to gain access. So a person asked in the comments, why is it difficult for Congress and for the government to forgive student loans, essentially, and why hasn't there been a bipartisan support for that?
Well, these are great, difficult questions. And for me, this is the heartbreaking part. And these are, broad generalizations, but to be, I was just trying to be honest and clear, trying to make college more affordable, trying to reduce costs, trying to reduce expenses, trying to minimize loans. That's been part of the Democratic agenda for a long time. There has been less or very little, maybe most honestly, almost no bipartisan support. And as we know, to get any bill passed, you need folks on both sides to do that. And so we have struggled. I'll say two things. I'm convinced that going to college is the best investment anyone can make in their futures. There are absolutely financial challenges and hardships, particularly when you don't come from a family with money, and obviously trying to get as many grants as you can, but you often do have to take out loans. The most challenging situation is if you have loans, but you don't graduate. And so loans without a degree is really, really a tough spot to be in. So I just would urge everybody to complete, and whether it's an associate's degree or a bachelor's or master's, PhD, again, in medical school, which is so remarkable to me. The goal is always not to go. The goal is to graduate and get across that finish line and get that piece of paper. But having said that, what I will say is the Biden administration has actually been much more successful than we were in reducing and forgiving many of those loans, literally billions of dollars, and hundreds of thousands of folks around the country have had loans forgiven. There's still more work to do. We were able to put in place something called public service loan forgiveness. If you worked in the public sector as a teacher or a counselor, or worked at a community medical clinic or whatever, that after 10 years of that service, all your loans would be forgiven. So it is still an issue. We made some progress that I'm proud of, but honestly not enough. The Biden administration has done much better than us in pushing that further. But yes, that financial challenge is still very real. And it's interesting, my wife is from Australia. I know you may have viewers from Australia. In other countries, higher education is almost free or close to free. My wife she went to the University of Tasmania, paid very little money, and there's no idea of loans or anything. And so ultimately for me, the big picture, what's the policy idea for me, the policy idea is that, we've had K to 12 education in America basically be free. I think we have to start earlier with pre-K. I want to give every child access to pre-K, high quality pre-K. And then for me, as we talked about earlier in the conversation, a high school diploma is necessary, but it's insufficient, that we really have to have a pre-K at least through 14 system that should be free. And for me, it's always, many folks see education as an expense. And I know it is an expense. I see it as an investment. I see it as the best investment we can make in our people, in our families, in our communities, in our country. If we want to keep high wage, high skilled jobs in our country, we have to have the best educated workforce. And so for me, the long-term policy goal, which we are a long way from, would be really having not a K to 12 public education system, but a pre-K to 14 at least education system, and having that become the norm. So that's my dream, but we are not there yet.
Wow. I agree. I think sometimes, like starting college, I felt like I was just kind of thrown into it, and it would have been nice to have that. So that is a really good question. I'm very policy minded, so that kind of prompts me to bring up the question of lately in the political landscape, we've seen like kind of polarism between Democrats and Republicans. And kind of, as you said earlier, education should not be a Democratic ideal or a Republican ideal. It should kind of be bipartisan throughout. So that brings me to prompt the question of, how do you think we could be able to kind of push more of these policies forward as we're going forward? And how can young people kind of affect this? And how can we see that change that we want to see through policy, and not just that debate back and forth?
Well, there's so many ways, I'll get into it, but this is obviously a very timely conversation that we have what I believe to be the most important election of my lifetime, coming up in just over 2 weeks. And again, I always speak candidly from the heart. This is not for me about, policy or, Democratic policy or Republican policy. This is really an election about whether we can preserve our democracy. And I'm just always candid, and people can disagree or push back. I am extraordinarily scared and worried if Trump were to become president again. And he has made clear exactly who he is, what he stands for. He has been clear what he thinks about immigrants. His racism is never hidden; it's overt. I go do work in Haiti every year, and what has recently been said about Haitian immigrants. There's just like your community; they're incredibly hardworking and assets to the community. What's been said about them is appalling. And so I would just urge everyone in the United States to please vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I'm very clear who I'm voting for. I think, the Vice President Harris would be a remarkable president. Obviously, be a history-making president. Is our first, woman, our first African-American woman. It'd be an extraordinary step in the right direction. I had a chance to work with her when she was a California senator, and just has so much respect for her intellect and her heart. But this is just a total dividing line about where our nation goes, and does our democracy, is it sustainable? And you sort of look at history, and you guys have lived this. Democracies are fragile things, and things that you think are rock solid. Our democracy has been rocked. And what we saw at the end of the Trump presidency and his refusal to give up power and the insurrection on the January 6th, I never ever thought I would see something like that in my lifetime. And I hope we never see it again. So I said earlier, my daughter just graduated from college. She's been working on the campaign. She's in Wilmington, Delaware, at Democratic headquarters, working as hard as she can. She was knocking on doors today in Pennsylvania, which is a swing state. But one of the most important ways that all of us can affect policy is to vote. And I understand many young people feel my vote doesn't matter, or they don't care about me, or whatever it might be. And yes, voting can be frustrating. Democracy is about compromise, and you never get everything done that you want to get done. But when you are on the outside looking in, things get done to you that nobody would want done to them. And so I just would please, there's so many ways to affect policy, being a policy maker, running for office, running for school board, there's so many ways that you can, on a very personal level, impact policy, local, state, national. But right now, I'm desperately fighting to try and help save our democracy. And I don't say that easily or lightly. That's not something I ever thought I would have to worry about. I hate that that's where we are as a country. I'm truly stunned as to how the election is still so close, to be dead honest with you. But here we are. And so, whatever it is, 14, 15 days, 16 days until the election, we just have to do everything we can to register to vote if we're not registered, and to actually show up and vote and make our voices heard. And the swing, not in the next 4 years, but the swing for the rest of our nation's history has never been this large. Last thing I'll say, in our election in 2012, when President Obama was running against Senator Romney, had we lost, we would have been crushed. But had Senator Romney won, he is an honorable man. He is a good man. Democracy would have persevered. We would have had a peaceful transition of power. This is a very, very different time. That feels like a different era. And so the stakes now are just so incredibly high.
Thank you. I think you touched on like some other questions that I had, especially about the importance of voting, since the election is like 16 days away. But to kind of transition to a kind of funner, more lighter question, especially during your time working with President Obama, one of the comments that was in the comments was a father was wondering how his daughter can meet former President Obama. And if you could just talk a little bit more about like, how was it working with the Obamas? I love and I adore the Obamas, especially Michelle. So just giving us a little insight on that.
Well, I can't promise that his daughter could meet the president, but we could see what we could do. That's not an easy one. So it's interesting. The theme is just the backstory is for much of my life, I've obviously had this love of education and working with young people and this love of basketball. And the basketball theme is an interesting one. So how I got to know President Obama is Michelle's older brother, Craig Robinson, was a great basketball player here in the South Side of Chicago. We grew up playing together. And so the first time we got to know, at that time, Barack Obama, that was Craig's little sister's boyfriend. And we had to make sure he was good enough for Craig's little sister. And we decided he was. And, we always say that how you play on the court reveals your character. You can't pretend, you can't hide who you are, because it shines through if you're selfish or greedy or can't handle pressure or whatever. So it was amazing to sort of see him ascend politically. And, Michelle and Craig were like so many of you, both of them, they were at a fantastic family, knew his father, close with his mother, but neither one of them had gone to college. They were very much working class. So Craig paved the way as a scholar athlete going and play at Princeton, and Michelle followed his footsteps. And President Obama had a pretty interesting childhood in Hawaii, which is a forgiving place, but he grew up with his father not in his life, grew up angry. He's talked about this and had some real challenges. I think his father came into his life for about a month when he was 10 or 11 years old, disappeared, never saw him again. He ended up being killed in a car accident. So he grew up with a lot of challenges, but obviously just incredibly bright young man. And so for both of them, for President Obama, for Michelle Obama, education was very, very personal. It wasn't some intellectual issue. It was really from their heart. This was their lived experience. And so I did not want to leave Chicago. I wanted to do 10 years as the CEO of the Chicago Public Schools. I had done 7.5 and wanted that continuity. Very candidly, had somebody else asked me to be Secretary of Education, I probably wouldn't have taken the job. But because I knew both of their hearts, both of their commitment, I knew how serious they were on this issue. It was just an absolute honor of a lifetime to go work with them. So I would, it's hard work, but it was amazing. I would do it again in a heartbeat, and traveling to all 50 states and seeing hundreds and hundreds of schools across the country. Saw amazing schools, saw tougher schools, and just learning from students, from teachers, from parents, from families was a dream. But it was too many basketball analogies, but I always want to just be on a great team and want to be on a great teammate. And being, a part of his team was, I think, easily the highest honor of my lifetime.
Well, Thank you. I didn't know, Ajay, if you had any more questions, but I don't want to run over time because we know we want to respect Secretary Duncan's time and just thank him again for, coming on to our show and just imparting us with so much knowledge today.
Thank you so much, Aguri. I was going to follow up on that. I checked the time, and we do respect your commitment. And
do one more question. Go ahead. We'll do one more question, then we'll wrap.
Okay. Okay.
If there's like one more question in the comments that someone would like to have before we let Secretary Duncan go, or if Dingkor or Bull wanted to ask one more question on the screen for Secretary Duncan, that would be great.
I have a question real quick. I'd love to hear any advice that you might offer to the South Sudanese people. What guidance would you give grassroots organizations, like, for example, TECA here, as we work towards expanding our impact in both the U.S. and in South Sudan, and in terms of how our nonprofit organization can best leverage partnerships and resources to create sustainable long-term change?
Yeah, well, I mean, part of what you do with this, this telecast is you guys have created this incredibly powerful community. And it is not domestic, it is international, it is global. I do know many of you are separated from loved ones, from family members, and that's incredibly difficult and painful. And to find ways to connect, to support each other like this is just brilliant. And just honestly inspiring to me. And I always, none of us go on these journeys alone. And it's really not about any one of our individual successes. It's like our success is other people's success. How do we bring other people along? And what you guys are doing to mentor, to support, to help the next generation, to walk the walk and be the leaders and role models that you want younger students to follow your footsteps in. I can't tell you how inspiring and important that is. So first of all, just a huge thank you for what you have built, what you will continue to build. Being civically active, being engaged. Change is always harder and slower than we would like it to be, but staying on the sidelines for me is never an option. And the tougher the challenge, the more we have to be engaged. I'm always a big believer in focus. So I think if you're trying to have like 20 different goals, that's probably hard to do. But if you guys can coalesce, again, not that everybody's going to agree on everything, and people have very different perspectives and viewpoints. But if you can agree, I'm just thinking out loud here, but on a goal or two or three that each year you're going to work on collectively in your local communities and in your global community, that for me is really, really powerful. And just being honest about what you can do, what you can't do, measuring your impact. As you said, none of us can do this alone, building those partnerships with other nonprofits, with governmental NGOs, other governmental organizations. And as your population matures, really thinking about public service, thinking about what you can do to not just influence policy from the outside, but to actually have a seat at the table and be helping to shape those policies. And for me, there's never a right or wrong of public sector versus private sector. But I just think, your stories, your lived experiences are so profoundly impactful and inspirational that there's so many of you could be remarkable leaders, not just for your South Sudanese community, but for kids from any kind of background. And so I would just encourage, final thing I'll say is that often, sometimes when people have overcome tremendous adversity, they see that somehow as a weakness or maybe a little stigmatized about it, whatever it might be. I would just say whatever you guys have overcome individually and collectively, and I'm sure there've been challenges, like I said, I can't even begin to understand. Please see that as a strength. Please see that as a remarkable demonstration, as you talked at the start of the call, of your perseverance, of your resilience, of your work ethic, of your commitment to success. And so those journeys have shaped you. They have made you who you are. Those lessons can help to shape others, and to have real pride, have tremendous pride in the individual journey and real pride in what you can accomplish together. So I don't know if that's a good answer to your question, but just don't underestimate your impact. Don't underestimate what you can do. Don't underestimate what you can do together. And please take tremendous pride in who you are, where you come from, and what you've overcome to get to this point.
Thank you so much for that. And I think that is such an important thing to like remember as a community and remember as we continue going forward. And I know people like me and Ajay are working really hard not to only just inspire people, but also to continue pushing forward and to create a seat at the table. So thank you for the work that you've done and the work that you continue to do to allow people like us to be able to share our stories and also to create a seat at the table where we could be able to not only bring up our Twic community, our South Sudanese community, but also affect change in America and continue seeing the change that we want to see. So thank you.
I think we have come to the end of our show. First and foremost, I want to thank you for your time and sharing your valuable insights with us today. Your experience and advice are truly appreciated, and we are inspired by the work you have done in education and beyond. This conversation has been incredibly meaningful, and I know our community will benefit from your words. And I hope that you can be a part of our community, and you are a part of our community, and you will always be a part of our community now. And so we hope that you come around anytime. Feel free. We're all a family here. So we're just all excited to meet you, talk to you, and it really has been a pleasure, honestly.
I so appreciate the opportunity. Again, you guys individually and collectively inspire me. And last thing, please vote. Please vote.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Great conversation. Great questions. And look forward to continuing the conversation.
Okay.
Take care. Now. Have a great evening.
All right. That's going to be our hot stop right there. Secretary Duncan, thank you very much. There was a comment on the comment section about sports. So I just wanted to throw it out there. You are a big sport fans. Are you a Sox or a Cubs?
I'm a South Side boy, so more the Sox, and they are the worst team in the history of baseball today this year. So that was painful. But I'm honestly more of a basketball guy, so I don't follow baseball that much. Yeah.
Awesome. Obviously, you are the Bulls, and everybody loves the Bull because of Michael Jordan. And obviously, for South Sudanese, Lord Deng has made his name out there, and it makes everybody become a Chicago Bull by default. So, everyone, thank you for watching, and on behalf of our community in the USA and for our leadership, we thank you, Secretary Duncan, and good night from now.
Thanks. Now have a great evening. Take care.
Thank you, Duncan. Going to put one more song close with the songs, okay, as Duncan has left. So you guys just bear with me, okay?
Ding, while you're looking for the song to play, I wanted to say one more thing. Don't quite die. Jajam thong yin. Kichi kichiro loyo kula. Yineke gon in catch temedeng ango. Kana jang jukut. I will well on will go walk or between bichangi rot ko koi ko. Where they need your alakat. Walk or buku mizu ko budiar ko. Buku nang accountability rot ko way community. Yineke kichiro loyo kula. Walk or buku koi kon ching walk one kop. Bukayala bay, Bukawabingi, which is just a group of people that want to be relevant on television. We wanted to connect ourselves with people that share the same values. Then what my job in Chugulajaret, Piet Brand, Ran, Piet and Chingan behind your koike. We engage your lawyer color. So when we get to eat, I want to talk with you. When they ran doing a thing at the edge, who are letting a little bit coin you wear. We went okay where it came. Kade, the one I think coin pan tree. This is just the beginning. TB tree, a call binaka chica kebaka will. I go koi cogun, I chung it, book wongy, I cheerqua. I cannot chew a kunum temedango, a chocolate. ki chi nga lwe la nga pet ba lui kita ku kan man yang a good example koi ko ka ben this was just the beginning we koi want to see wo we follow up ni ku den wor ku ja ku nam resource mobilizations we we follow up through kan ga ni nga kon wo ngi secretary ku ko ka ben twen we cha le we mi tu nya ji dai wo dia we ni we lo pe ya lo ret ba cha ping tree ko ke in the back studio. Great job. Great facilitation. No good. You maintain the time perfectly. What hot stop at 6:12. When walkable for 45 minutes, is done as perfectly as possible. It's been a very engaging conversation, and that's how we needed it. Thank you, everyone. And I'm so honored to be a part of it.
Hey, and before you guys go, nga với English cái tông giang với your testimony of the and so cái tàu yên với chú cái mua với coi đại nhà lại cái way của cả bài Charles day 26 you guys nhạc anh event rồi reunion in nhạc của gia prayers so Iowa you guys are welcome back la cả bài mà we go look in the table the media age cái na cả bài Charles na nên là cái bar on that day Agwe and Ja, you guys did a remarkable presentations, and I'm so overwhelming with the work that you guys done. So this is a good time for those Sudanese to listen to a secretary. So yeah, in which you can lay your quite die. Yeah, no but your turn to go. Nothing about the in a job, you know, you guys who can allow about your turn to you win tongue. Cover our last song of the day. Chana Chow, and you know what you're doing.
I just want to say thank you guys again for giving us this opportunity. And thank you everyone who took the time to come and watch. And also thank you so much, Ajah, for being able to connect with him and make him feel comfortable during that discussion to be able to share his time. But I wanted to say to everyone to take these words and resonate with them. Think about the words that Secretary Duncan gave us today and try to use those words to inspire you and to continue pushing. And that if you have any youth that are watching, allow them to watch this video because I know I definitely learned a lot. And so being able to continue doing that and continue moving forward as a community and any connections that we have, bringing them here and inviting us to Twic community and showing that. And then to echo the last thing that Secretary Duncan said is please go and vote. Be able to be part of these things and be able to make these networks is participating in what we might call American politics or just
agree. Hold on. I have Gitano, which is Thonunathon, is a co-founder of the Talkline Media. I really in Bajam Tongajing. He's actually staying in Jupok, so can you get real gagan?
Okay. Tongajing dia cheap yet. But about like mix English about Dinglish about loy. Secretary Duncan Chuluin, Ranabin Balabi Kola. What is I don't know what the word for vote is. But of the candidate that you think that is the most important. But what I've been late to ben yekole but I've been like come and we could like die cool we could being of what Secretary Duncan said. But thank you guys again and thank you for Twic community for giving us this platform. And I'm Bagama Ja. So I'm not the only one, but Ja, so Ajala Twic.
Okay. Which accolades, everybody. I'm really, really proud of our community. We are incredibly vibrant, and I'm deeply honored to have had the opportunity to serve these last 3 years. It's still early in my career, but these experiences will remain some of the most meaningful in my life. And I take immense pride in being part of a community that, despite enduring a 20-plus year war, we still demonstrate such perseverance and strength. It's truly inspiring. I'm really proud of all you guys, and I'm proud to be from you guys. So, which accolade, thank you.
I
deng di de chitwek.
Good night. Bye. All right. Okay.